Hello, hello, hello. This is Adriane Berg, and this is the Ageless Traveler. This is the show that gives you the information, but also the inspiration you need to never stop traveling. Join our Facebook salon, take advantage of our free ebooks, look at our YouTube videos, and you'll find out everything on agelesstraveler.com. Now, this show is a continuation in a series of celebrations. It's a celebration of the end of our very first year on the air. And part of that celebration are the people that I have met along the way. So many wonderful people, one of them being Marla Noel. I met her actually at a Noir festival, 3 days right here in Palm Springs. But I was really fascinated by her background in travel. And it also fit in very well with something you've been asking me about, which is Africa, Africa, Africa. And what does it really feel like to go on safari? So you wanted to hear from the actual folks that go, the ageless travelers, not just from the people or experts in the field. We've done that, but now today, a real ageless traveler. So thank you, Marla, for being with us today.
Well, thank you, Adriane, for having me. And I am so impressed with you because what you have done is pretty darn amazing. So I'm really happy that I met you in Palm Springs at the NoirCon.
It was wonderful. So one of the things I want everybody to know is we will be speaking to Marla about her books. She has business book out. She's doing now a mystery book that will be coming out in 2025. So she's a woman of many parts. She is a coach, a business coach, and a lot more. But for the time being, I want to just dig a little bit deeper. Now, you have been to many places in the world, but you keep saying, my favorite part is Africa. Tell me why you feel that way.
Oh, my goodness. I think Africa is like the Wild West, must have been 100 years ago, because there's so much of it that's open and untamed, and every part of Africa is a little different. I've been to South Africa and to Kenya, and for both, they're so different as far as the experiences were concerned, but I enjoyed both experiences equally.
So let's talk about safari, and let's start with Kenya first, all right? Tell me about what you did when you were there, first starting with how long you were there, because people want to know how long does it really take to get a feel of Africa?
Well, you can get the feel right away. So we were in Kenya. I went with my sisters and went to the Parini camps with game watchers. We were there about 10 days and we were in 3 different camps. I will just tell you, flying into our first camp from Nairobi and landing on a grass strip was zebras on one side, giraffes on another. It was one of those things like, you're not in Kansas anymore.
Right,
it was wonderful.
I do remember being in Malaysia in the jungle and listening to the sounds. To me, the sounds were the most amazing thing. It sort of gets under your skin. Now, in these camps, give us a little bit of an audio visual, so to speak, about what the camps looked like and what kind of accommodations they were.
Well, the camps, and I think this is for many, many of the camps in Kenya, it was a tent. So all kinds of sizes of tents. So for us, 3 women traveling to Kenya, which, by the way, I felt so safe. 3 women traveling together, but they're tents and they're on an elevated platform. So you're not in a tent on the ground. It really is elegant tent traveling.
Yes.
So
glamping, they sometimes call it glamour camping, glamping.
Yeah. So it was almost glamorous. So this was, I'd say, a 3-star experience where you do have to arrange for your showers in advance and you have 5 minutes and no more, no less. Well, it could be less, I suppose, but when what we were more concerned about was seeing the animals and just being out there, which was amazing.
So let's talk about the safari. Did you do jeeps or walking? How'd you get around to see the game in the game farms?
That's a good question. So we were in jeeps, but they were open jeeps. So there were no windows. So when you see the lions, you're literally 3 feet away from a lion, which is just so invigorating. And the tents, even though they're tents, the beds are like normal beds. And it's so interesting that every time we got into bed, and it was a little bit chilly in one of the camps, there was a hot water bottle in the bed. So it's not like there aren't things that really shock you with little pleasures. It was
Yes.
pretty incredible.
Now, speaking of little pleasures, tell me a little bit about the food. How is it prepared? Is it on the outside, outdoors? And do you have any issues, in eating the food that's being offered in these 3-star type experiences?
I would have to say it was all good. There were no Michelin star chefs there, but it was good. I was never hungry because they literally are constantly feeding you. When you go out on the safari in the morning, you get a little breakfast out in the field, which is it's so beautiful, out in the first as the sun is rising, you're out there in the middle of the wildlife. Same with in the evening, you get a cocktail and you get appetizers out in the field before you actually come in and have dinner. And I am a wino, so I will
Yes.
say the wine wasn't great, but it wasn't horrible. So it was, I shouldn't say it was not box wine because some of the box wine is actually pretty good, but it was good.
Yeah, one of the things that people do want to do is they want to have culinary experiences that are different. I'm not sure everybody wants to eat termites, or eyeballs, but they definitely do want to know the difference between what they can get here in a restaurant and what they can get in, let's say, Nairobi. So did you get an opportunity to see the city at all, or did you go out immediately into the safari?
We got a night to see the city, to see Nairobi. I love Nairobi, actually. And we had a chance to see some of the sites in Nairobi. But, so I would go just to see Nairobi because it's so international. There are people from all parts of the world there. And we met so many interesting people there before we even had a chance to get out and, go to the safaris.
I work a lot with the United Nations. My listeners certainly know that. And one of the things that I do is I'm one of the representatives from the International Federation on Aging to the UN. Here is my favorite story. Nairobi was named by the UN years ago as the first age-friendly city in the world. Nairobi was the very, very first one, and there was a criteria for age friendliness. So I have to give them a shout out just for that. Now there are many, many age-friendly cities, but they stepped up to the plate very quickly, and it doesn't come to mind if you say what would be an age-friendly. Everybody thinks of Singapore, and so blue zones. They don't think of Africa, but Nairobi really is. Before we take a break, let's go to the animals. So you're in this Jeep. You're seeing a lion 3 feet away. Oh, my goodness. What else? What else were you able to see? And, people talk about going on safari and coming back disappointed. They hardly saw anything. So what has been the experience there?
Well, I think if you go to the right camps, you're not going to be disappointed. So game watchers, we saw leopards, saw a cheetah take down an impala, maybe not something some people want to see, but it was exciting. I felt bad for the impala, but there was so much. We had a chance.
Nature. You see nature in the raw.
Everything. We sat next to a hyena den where there was a little baby hyena that was, being next to its mom, and which scared me to death because it was my side of the Jeep, and I don't know how far hyenas can jump.
Now, are there people there with guns just in case?
No, because this is a conservancy. Most of the safaris are in conservancy, so I think there are guns back at the main camp, and the lion camp. Actually, there were people with guns for the Perini camps. But for most of the safaris, you're not going to go out in a Jeep with a gun. But I don't think necessary. If you are respectful and you don't do something stupid like get out of the Jeep or make funny noises at the lions, you're fine.
So for everybody thinking about safari, this is a very big decision to make. What you're hearing from Marla Noel is game reserves. And this also is what we've had in the past on our shows. We've talked to folks who actually run game reserves, if you look back in some of our podcasts. And so let's say the odds of you seeing animals is very high, very good. But the second way that a lot of people go are these huge national parks, the names that you know, also in Tanzania and Kenya. There, it's also very exciting, but it's also very crowded. And that sometimes is a drawback. We come back, I want to talk to you about your other safari, because you've been there twice and you're planning yet to go again. So don't you guys go anywhere. And we are back, and we're back with Marla Noel. Now, we'll be talking to her about her writing. We'll be talking to her about her business coaching and business support. But right now, we are simply talking about Africa, and she's kind of Africa ecstatic. So it's not just Kenya and the names you know in terms of safari, but she's also been to a very hot topic place, and that is South Africa. For those of you who don't know, the International Federation on Aging, which I just mentioned, is having its first conference in Africa, and they selected Cape Town. So Africa is, honestly, it's hot. And I don't mean only the temperature. So Marla, you really outlined for us a 3-star experience. Now outline for us a 5-star experience.
Yeah, so I am fortunate to know the owner of Flow Travel, who arranged our entire South Africa experience, which included Madikwe, which is in very close to Johannesburg, so very accessible. And we stayed in Rulani Safari Lodge, which is a 5-star experience. You get your own little house, which has an outside shower, your own individual hot tub, your very large distance from you to the next house. It's very comfortable and exclusive, but still you have a chance to see the Big Five in Madikwe. And one of the things that you mentioned, going to the large parks, there are a lot of people, it's crowded. In a place like Madikwe, they limit the number of jeeps around a particular animal to 3. So
that's very small.
That was similar experience in Kenya, but in Madikwe, you get to see the Big Five, which you don't necessarily in all the camps in Kenya.
Yes. So, you mentioned the fact that you could do a lot of things other than just safari. There's a lot of wonderful outdoor activities. So what are some of the things that you did in South Africa other than the Big Five?
So Cape Town is beautiful. And some of our group decided to go hang gliding off a cliff. Not something I would choose to do. Yeah. But in fact, the providers of the hang gliding, they were all having a little discussion, should we, the winds are really bad. Should we do this? And I go to my group and say, guys, they're talking about how dangerous it is. But it didn't matter. My group went anyway, and they had a great time. It was a chance of a lifetime for them. There's also Table Mountain, which is beautiful. Cape Town is a fabulous place to visit.
Yeah, so I said, when I heard and I knew that you had done some hang gliding, I have a bungee jumping story that I need to tell everybody because it's one of those ageist stories that make me crazy. If you go to Victoria Falls, there was a time that you could bungee jump off Victoria Falls, bungee jumping, not hang gliding. And I got all suited up, and everybody was all suited up. And we got there. We were press. It was a press trip. They sent us out there. And everybody went bungee jumping, and I was the oldest, but by far, maybe by 30 years. And somebody came over to me and said, if you bungee jump, you could lose your cornea at your age. And I didn't do it. I didn't jump. Oh. Now they didn't say that to anybody else. Now this was a long time ago. This is one of the things that makes me crazy. All the time you get dissuaded from doing something. And of course, if you're scary anyway, right? It's scary. I'm not a great one for heights to begin with. You're bungee jumping. You're off a cliff, basically, into a waterfall. I mean, it's scary to begin with. And when somebody says that to you, what do you think you do? So don't listen to those guys. That doesn't mean I want you to go and, do things that are ridiculously unsafe. But if you get dissuaded, think for a minute first as to whether or not they're just saying it because they are ageist and they see some gray hairs. So let's talk about that. What are the ages of the folks on your trip? And I see you have a comment on that too.
Yeah, that's a really good question, because we had some people in their 70s on the trip, and a couple in their 80s, but jumping off the cliff, doing the hang gliding, a couple of people in their 70s. So I couldn't go at that time. I'm just terrified of heights, so it's not something I'm going to do anyway. But I mean, the guys that were jumping off the cliff, they didn't dissuade anybody from doing this. They had a great time. In fact, wonderful. one of my clients went. She's in her 70s, and we were just talking about it the other day. She just thought it was an experience of a lifetime.
Yeah, so I do want to talk about that. There's one element of travel that I don't think is spoken of enough, and that is it's a wonderful way to make friends, to make new friends. Now, in your case, you make clients sometimes when you visit. And I just came back from Cannes. It feels like but it's about a month or two ago, where I was at the Silver Economy Conference. And I was there because we were nominated for an award, which we did not win, by the way. But it was an award of fighting isolation through travel. I'm very happy we lost, because the people who did win were fighting isolation for people who had Alzheimer's. And frankly, I thought that was much more noble than what I was doing. But it was a great honor from the whole world to be among only 6. But travel does thwart isolation. So tell us about that. I know you've kept friends and even clients from your travel experience. How's that been for you?
Yeah, that's a good question, because when you're traveling with somebody, you get to know the whole person. And I am inclined to talk about business. I love it. I'm good at it. And yes, on a trip to Mexico, we were talking about business. And after we came back from Mexico, one of the people that attended has a construction business and said, "Hey, can you help us?" And so that's when I started working with that client, and they're still a client. So,
well, as I said, Marla is a person of many parts. She's an MBA, she's a CPA, she's also the CEO of OC Growth Advisors. But that it is a business builder, isn't it? Tell us a little bit about that part of your life, the OC.
Well, I started this business after I sold a business that I ran and owned part of for many years. And as a CPA, MBA, over the years, I've learned so much about running a business, and I love it. So I study it. I was in Vistage, which is a CEO roundtable group, for 14 years, and I run a group of women presidents called WPO Women's Presidents Organization. I work with business owners to help them focus. So many entrepreneurs get distracted with things and then lose sight of their true strategies. And so I help them, and I push a little bit. I push a lot, actually.
Right.
To focus on, what are the 3 to 5 things you need to do to grow and be profitable. And so growth for the sake of growth is not necessarily a good thing.
No, there has to be a reason. I do have one quick question. On your first safari, you mentioned that you were with your sisters. The South African safari, you mentioned that you were with a group. Did you travel on your own with the group, or did you also have your sisters with you or someone else?
So the group was pretty much WPO members, Women Presidents Organization. So women that were in the organization, most of them went on this trip to South Africa.
Okay. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about, believe it or not, what you wish you had done, what you didn't do, as opposed to what you did do, so that we can be instructed as to what to look for when we go to Africa. Don't you guys go anywhere. And we're back. We're here with somebody who I just resonated with. Her name is Marla Noel. We were simply at a wonderful event, which was a 3-day event, Noir Con. It started in Philadelphia. I actually wrote about it in our Travel Tuesday newsletter. And a lot of people said to me that they watched the movies, streaming services that I had told them about, and they had a ball at home watching these noir films. But one of the great things that came out of it was a friendship with Marla Noel. And one of the things that she loves is Africa. So we have had so many people on who are in the business of safari, Marla. And they told us about safari from their point of view. And I wanted to have somebody like yourself who was a traveler, an ageless traveler, talk about it. So you gave us some good information about the difference between 3-star and 5-star, the difference between the big five and other animals, Kenya versus South Africa. Is there you regret or you wish you had done, whether it was stay longer or see more countries or whatever? What would you advise us to do that you may want to go back and have a little bit of a rewind?
Well, and the game watchers, the Perini camps, I am sorry I did not get a chance to go to the rhino camp or the cheetah camps because so one thing that you see in those camps is you get to meet people that you've seen in previous camps. So we got to know some people that had been to the rhino camp and they were just telling us how amazing it was. So I wish I had had a chance to see more of the Perini camps.
And was that a matter of time that you didn't have the time to do more? Could you have done more?
Yeah, it was a limited time. And when I go back, I plan to see other camps in Kenya. I am going to Uganda to trek with the gorillas in January.
Yes. Now I wanted to talk about that. One of the things I've asked Marla to do, by the way, is to be a roving reporter, if there's such a thing in a gorilla camp. So now I am planning this. I've not done it. I will tell you that I had a travel buddy, a woman, who I was about 60. She was already 70 years old. She had just climbed Kilimanjaro, by the way. And she told me that she had a Sherpa who, at the end, when she got to the top, opened a big sign she didn't know he was carrying, saying, "Mama made it." So, because she was one of the oldest people who was climbing Kilimanjaro at that time. But we used to travel together as press. And one of the things she told me about was the Uganda trip. She actually had a gorilla come up to her and touch her chest. And she said it was the most amazing feeling of her entire life. She began to really understand the connection of all people and all animals. So I'm expecting this to be amazing. Tell us the trip you're going on and give us a little bit of a taste of what you expect to see, because you haven't been on there yet.
Yeah, so I know that the person that's guiding us, again, this is Flow Travel, Tara Turkington, has been to Uganda and trekked with the gorillas, and she had a gorilla grab her behind the knee and she fell down. She wasn't hurt, but yes, you're connected to you're right there with the gorillas. So there is very little control over what you do, what the gorillas do. I think that's part of the adventure. I love that.
Yes, and again, I'm going to put my Ageless Traveler 2 cents in this. There's two ways of seeing gorillas. One is in a habitat, and the other one is you trek. And trekking is the way to go. If your friend was actually touched by a gorilla that way, they probably were trekking. That's the way to go. And don't let anybody tell you can't make it.
Yeah. Yes. And evidently, if you have a hard time walking, if you have a hip issue or a knee issue, some of them have people who will carry you.
Yes.
So, yeah, you're not limited if you have a hard time walking, from my understanding.
Well, that is true, except that there are habitats, which honestly, it's like a big zoo. Don't do those. Do the kind that Marla is doing and that I will be doing, where you're really trekking to the habitats, into the habitats, to see gorillas in the wild. So that's really very, very important. You have that in Australia too, where you have Australia kangaroo farms as opposed to actually going and trying to spot. And you don't always spot when that happens. You have to be very patient. But it is apparently a transformative experience.
And we have two different excursions for trekking. And the reason is that you don't always see the gorillas on your first excursion. So this is to make sure that we do get a chance to see gorillas.
Yes, and that's always the risk. But if you see them there in the wild, it's a whole, as I say, an amazing, amazing experience. Now, I wanted to ask you about packing. What did you take? Because I'm thinking about this myself. What am I going to take? What did you take?
As little as possible, because in a lot of the airports in Africa, I believe you're limited to 35 pounds. So you just can't take a lot. In some places you can find, they'll do your laundry for you. So that's a consideration. But really, you're going to have to be wearing some of those clothes maybe twice or three times.
Right. And everybody else is, and everything smells like animals anyway. So who cares? So
exactly. And, your hair is not going to look the best either. So in the Kenya camp, there were no hair dryers because we were limited on electricity. So just enjoy the freedom.
Exactly. The people who served you, were they, in both cases, the 3-star and the 5-star, were they trained? Were they established? And I'm not only talking about the safari guides because they are very established always. I'm talking about everybody else. You mentioned a cook, you mentioned laundry. What did you see there in terms of the staff?
I'd like to speak to what Kenya had because in Kenya, the camps that we went to encouraged the staff to become educated and in some cases supported their education. And of course, a lot of the studies are, the conservancy. What do the animals need? What is the vegetation? How do you have balance? Because if you have too many of one animal, that will mess up the other animals. So it was really interesting. And then at night, we would have a campfire and they would tell us a little bit more about the animals and their lifestyle and what it was like to grow up in Kenya.
So the culture of the current, let's say the modern Kenyan, is something that you learned, because sometimes, and I hear this a lot from people in the industry, by the way, they put on a show. They put on a show because they want people, particularly of the West, they want to see costumes, they want to see dancing, they want to see what looks tribal, right? And they'll put on a show to make you feel that, oh, this is our culture. But in fact, it's a very modern culture with a very long history that still impacts everyone. So I guess what I'm saying is you're getting to know the real Kenyans, and as opposed to the folklorico show.
Exactly.
But you picked Kenya, but South Africa. Was that different? Was it more homogenized because we have Cape Town, which is such a big area, and the people were less involved with being educated because they already were? What was the difference in the staff feeling there?
In the staff in South Africa, that the Jeep drivers were maybe a little more sophisticated, maybe because it was a 5-star, but the people that cooked and provided more information, more service, were all incredibly well trained. I was so impressed with the level of service. So, just we couldn't have asked for better service. And the food was great. It was really a wonderful experience.
So those were folks already deep into the hospitality industry. They really understood, the hospitality.
Definitely. Yeah, it's very important to, I think, all of Africa to be able to provide a good service and a good experience, because like you said, their economy is, a lot of it is based on tourism.
Yeah. So I will say this, a shameless plug. We started something with the World Tourism Network called Ageless Tourism for the industry. to really understand us better. And we issue a badge that they're recognized as being aware of our needs. And we put this out there to the industry, and the first companies that glommed onto it so quickly were all African. So I was amazed. I think they're really, really trying to understand all age groups, be intergenerational, and that's really why I've been covering so much with regard to Africa. And also because our listeners ask. So we're going to take a little bit of a break. We're going to come back with our last segment, which is going to be completely different because Marla, as I said, is a woman of many parts. We'll talk a little bit about her writing. Don't you guys go anywhere. And we are back. As you know, this is part of our series. I call it our anniversary celebration series because we've been around for 1 year. We're babies. I have other podcasts that have been around for 8 years. And of course, I've been around. Well, don't even ask that one. But I've been on the air since 1988. So for me, this is my labor of love. I want you all to never stop traveling. But one of the things that happens when you do travel is you meet great people. And you never can tell. So one of the things that when I met Marla was that she has a business book out, but she is also coming out with a mystery book. And mystery is the kind of books I love. So just for quickly, tell us the name of your business book. I'll put that in the show notes.
Thank you. It's called Drama-Free Management. And I wrote this book with an incredibly smart individual named Pete Fowler. It was 3 years in the making from me documenting my experience in running my own business and with working with clients. You know, what were some of the successful things that we did and what were some of the mistakes that I saw?
We've led so many lives. So it's the same thing, Marla. We're talking to you about going to Africa. Now we're talking to you about a business book. But honestly, I want to talk to you about Cemetery Trail. Tell us about that.
Well, Cemetery Trail is a novel and a thriller, and I have two protagonists. So one is a CPA who ran a cemetery mortuary. That just so happens to be my background. I'm a CPA, and for over 20 years, I ran a pretty good sized cemetery mortuary operation in California, in Santa Ana. And so they say, write what you know. So I did. Now, fortunately, the other protagonist gets even with the bad guys. So she's an attorney, a prosecuting attorney. And if she doesn't get the bad guys in court, she takes care of them outside of court. In other words, she does them in. We'll call it dextering them.
I see. So yeah, this played pretty thrilling. I will admit. And that's now. What possessed you? Look, did you just wake up one morning and say, I'm just going to do this for myself, and you're working pretty hard at it? What was the impetus?
That's a good question. So I think being creative is an important part of your development of who you are as a person. I love creativity, and that really doesn't come into play that much as a CPA, or maybe shouldn't too much. Over 10 years ago, I joined a writing class put on by Barbara DeMarco Barrett here in Southern California. And I had a long way to go to improve my skills as a writer. But I feel like I've really learned the craft. When I first started writing this book, the characters would not cooperate. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to kill them all off and start all over again. But go figure, they started cooperating. And now I'm very close to being done with the book.
Fantastic. Well, we're going to be looking forward to that. And we're going to be looking forward to hearing what your experience was in Uganda and guiding us again for these new adventures in our lives. So we thank you so much, Marla, for being with us. And this is Adriane Berg asking you to please join our free Facebook salon. Take a look at our website, agelesstraveler.com. You'll find some wonderful articles and wonderful products coming up for Christmas. So those of you who have travelers in your life and you'd like to give them something very unique, in every case, we have really wonderful, fascinating products on our products and services page. And in most cases, we have great discounts too. So that's agelesstraveler.com, and never stop traveling.